When the HOA told me my 20-foot fishing boat was an eyesore that violated community standards, I had no idea I was about to end up owning the entire marina they worshipped. That metallic clank you hear? That's me locking the marina gate while their precious yachts sit trapped inside. Those same board members who tried to fine me into the ground are now learning a real-life lesson in property rights. I'm Jake Thornfield, 45, retired Coast Guard mechanic. After a brutal divorce, all I wanted was peace and fishing. When I inherited my late uncle's waterfront home in Millbrook Shores, Florida, I thought I'd finally found it. The place was paradise, calm waters, bright sunrises, and my pride and joy, a 1987 Boston whaler called Rusty Anchor. She's no beauty queen, but she runs smoother than most million-dollar yachts. For a few months, life was perfect, until I met Priscilla Weatherford. Picture the stereotypical HOA tyrant in designer sunglasses, clutching her clipboard like a weapon. She ran the neighborhood like a dictatorship, obsessed with property values and appearances. The morning she appeared on my dock, inspecting my boat like it was a biohazard, I should have known she'd be trouble. 3 months after moving in, I got a certified letter accusing me of violating aesthetic standards. Apparently, my legal, registered, and spotless fishing boat didn't fit the image she wanted for the community. The fine? $200 a day unless I removed it. I tried reasoning with her at the next HOA meeting. A mistake. Under flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of burnt coffee, Priscilla sat like a queen at the head of a folding table, while the rest of the room avoided eye contact. When I explained my boat met every state regulation, she smiled that fake realtor smile and said, "Perhaps you'd be happier in a neighborhood that matches your lifestyle." The way she said lifestyle told me everything. She wasn't targeting my boat. She was targeting me. A working-class veteran with grease under his nails didn't fit her glossy brochure version of Millbrook Shores. Over the next month, she made my life miserable. The fines jumped to $500 a day. My guests started getting parking tickets. She even reported me to the county for operating a commercial fishing business, which was pure fiction, but forced me to deal with inspectors and paperwork. But I wasn't the kind of man to fold. 20 years in the Coast Guard teaches you to handle storms, and Priscilla was just another storm. So I fought back the only way I knew how. Research. Night after night, I sat in the county records basement surrounded by dusty files and humming lights. That's where I discovered the ace my uncle had left me. Riparian rights, permanent water access attached to my property, older than the HOA itself. Even better, an old easement agreement gave my property unique privileges at the community marina. While I dug deeper, my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Bennett, became my ally. Over coffee, she handed me a notebook filled with years of Priscilla's misconduct, phony violations, intimidation, and favoritism. "That woman's been terrorizing this place for years," she told me. "You might finally be the one to stop her." I started documenting everything. Phone calls, photos, timestamps, witnesses. Every move she made went into my growing evidence stack. What she didn't realize was that she'd turned her HOA playground into a legal minefield. When she called an emergency meeting to ban my marina access, claiming my fishing boat was a safety hazard, I watched her performance in silence. Her liability reports were a joke, but the vote passed anyway. Proof she controlled the board with fear. Meanwhile, I noticed the marina's fancy yacht club wasn't exactly clean. Late-night engines, oil slicks, and fuel spills were constant, so I began filming everything. That's when I met Dr. Sarah Martinez from an environmental watchdog group. She'd been tracking pollution from that same marina for years and needed access to collect data. Suddenly, I had a new front in this war: environmental law. While working through my uncle's old papers, I found letters showing that the marina was originally public access. The HOA had slowly privatized it through shady deals, possibly illegal ones. My uncle had fought that battle decades ago and left behind everything: maps, deeds, correspondence. It was like he'd known someone would need these records one day. At the same time, I filed an ethics complaint against Priscilla's real estate license, complete with documentation of her harassment and discrimination. The state board started sniffing around, and suddenly her smug confidence began to crack. As the weeks passed, pressure built on every side. Environmental investigators were visiting the marina. County officials were questioning the HOA's financial records. Priscilla was losing her grip, but she doubled down. She hired a private investigator to tail me, which was laughable. I waved at the guy every morning. Then one day, she crossed the line completely. She had Rusty Anchor towed, claiming it was abandoned property, even though it was docked legally on my pier. It took me a full day and $300 to get her back. Next, She went after my livelihood, calling local businesses, spreading rumors that I was unstable. Suddenly, the fuel dock was out of order whenever I arrived. Stores ran out of supplies I needed. She was trying to isolate me. But while she played petty games, I found my uncle's true parting gift, a safety deposit box holding underwater property surveys from the 1960s. They showed I owned 2 submerged parcels directly beneath the marina entrance. Those parcels controlled access to the entire marina basin, which meant the HOA and yacht club had been paying rent to the wrong people for 15 years. In that moment, I realized I didn't just have leverage. I owned the ground under their empire. Every lease, every permit, every boat slip depended on my property. Without my consent, their marina couldn't legally operate. My uncle's final journal entry echoed in my head. The most valuable rights are the ones they forget to steal. Mrs. Bennett and other neighbors joined forces. She handed me folders of financial inconsistencies and proof of selective rule enforcement. Meanwhile, Dr. Martinez's reports showed the marina's pollution levels exceeded EPA limits, violations that could trigger serious federal penalties. Priscilla had built her kingdom on fraud, and it was about to collapse. I contacted the marina's management and calmly said, "You've been paying rent to the wrong landlord." The silence that followed was priceless. A week later, I walked down to my dock, coffee in hand, and looked out over the trapped yachts bobbing behind my chain-link fence. The sun glinted off the water, my water, and the sound of those idle engines was sweeter than any victory speech. Priscilla's HOA dictatorship had finally run aground. The woman who fined me for owning a cheap fishing boat had lost control of her $1 million marina, and the neighborhood was waking up from her reign of fear. What started as one man defending his right to keep a boat turned into the unraveling of an entire corrupt system. My uncle's meticulous planning, my Coast Guard discipline, and a little bit of stubborn justice brought it all crashing down. Now, every time I hear the wind rattle the marina gate, or smell that mix of salt and diesel in the air, it reminds me of one simple truth. Never underestimate the quiet guy who just wants to fish in peace, because sometimes that quiet guy owns the whole damn dock. The morning after I locked that marina gate, Millbrook Shores felt different, quieter, like the whole place was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. Word traveled fast. By noon, everyone knew I wasn't bluffing. The HOA board's phones were ringing off the hook. Yacht owners, realtors, and angry residents were all demanding answers from their fearless leader. Meanwhile, I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee, watching the chaos unfold through binoculars. Priscilla was down at the marina in full meltdown mode, heels sinking into gravel, barking orders at maintenance crews who couldn't legally touch a thing without my permission. Every time she pointed toward the locked gate, the workers just shrugged. They'd already heard the news. The property records were clear. Those underwater parcels were mine, fair and square. By noon, she stomped up my driveway, face redder than a stop sign. "You can't do this!" she screamed, waving a stack of papers like they were holy scripture. "Oh, I can," I said calmly, handing her a photocopy of the deed. "And you might want to call your lawyer before you trespass again. That gate's on private property now, mine." She sputtered something about lawsuits and public nuisance, but I could see the panic behind her sunglasses. For the first time, Priscilla Weatherford didn't have control. The next few days were beautiful chaos. Yacht owners panicked when they realized they couldn't access their boats. Some begged, others threatened. One even offered me 10 grand to open the gate for the weekend. I told him to take it up with the HOA. They were the ones who'd been charging illegal marina fees. If they wanted their toys back, they could untangle the mess their queen had created. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bennett and I were busy organizing evidence. She'd recruited half the neighborhood now. Retirees, teachers, even a couple of former HOA board members who'd quit under Priscilla's reign. My living room looked like a war room. Papers and maps spread across every surface. We had financial statements, forged meeting minutes, and proof of HOA funds being funneled into Priscilla's private real estate ventures. Dr. Martinez was also back, armed with environmental test results that made even my jaw drop. Fuel contaminants, illegal waste dumping, violations dating back years. The marina's eco-friendly reputation was about as real as Priscilla's personality. I knew I had enough ammunition to blow the whole thing open, but timing mattered. So I waited. Let her squirm. Let the board panic. Let the yacht owners realize the golden goose they'd been feeding didn't even own the nest. On the 5th day, I got a letter from the HOA's lawyer. It was 3 pages of legal threats written in the kind of pompous language only billable hours could buy. I almost laughed. They demanded I cease obstruction of community property or face immediate litigation. So I sent back a 1-page reply, copies of the property deeds, riparian rights, and a cheerful note inviting them to contact the county clerk for verification. 2 days later, the lawyer resigned from representing them. That was the moment I knew the tide had fully turned. The local newspaper picked up the story next. Retired Coast Guard veteran shuts down HOA Marina over property dispute. Within hours, the article spread like wildfire. Reporters called, YouTubers emailed, and the HOA's pristine image started crumbling faster than a sandcastle in high tide. Priscilla tried to spin it, of course, claimed it was all a misunderstanding. But the documents didn't lie, and soon enough the county commissioners launched an investigation. What came out was uglier than even I'd expected. Priscilla and her cronies had been running a full-blown racket, collecting marina fees illegally, misusing community funds, even falsifying maintenance invoices to pad their pockets. When the county's audit hit, residents finally saw the numbers. Tens of thousands missing. HOA dues used for personal vacations, home renovations, and consulting fees. Neighbors who'd once been too scared to speak now lined up at my porch to thank me. Some brought pies, others brought stories. Years of being bullied, fined, and harassed into silence. It was like a dam breaking. But Priscilla wasn't done yet. A control freak like her doesn't surrender quietly. She tried to rally the remaining board members, convincing them to sue me personally. It backfired spectacularly when the county suspended their HOA status pending investigation. Without legal authority, the HOA was just another neighborhood club with no teeth. And then came the cherry on top. The environmental agency hit the marina with multiple violations. The fines were enormous. The EPA got involved. The marina was officially shut down for cleanup until further notice. Boats couldn't move, permits were frozen, and every ounce of her empire was now under government watch. I watched from my dock as cleanup crews arrived in hazmat suits, testing water samples while yacht owners fumed on shore. That's when I realized how poetic it all was. The same people who'd called my fishing boat an eyesore were now stuck staring at oil-slicked water and piles of legal paperwork. Weeks passed. The neighborhood transformed. Without Priscilla's iron grip, people actually started talking again. Kids played outside. Neighbors shared tools instead of gossip. Mrs. Bennett became something of a folk hero, giving interviews to local papers about the tyranny of HOAs. Then one morning, I got a certified letter, this time from the county clerk. It confirmed what I already knew. My ownership of the marina access parcels was absolute. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was, legally speaking, the gatekeeper of Millbrook Shore's entire waterfront. I stood on the dock, wind in my hair, and thought about my uncle. The old man had seen this all coming. He'd left behind more than property. He'd left me the means to defend something worth more than money. Dignity. But the story didn't end there. With the HOA dissolved and the marina shuttered, the community needed a path forward. A few neighbors approached me with an idea to reopen the marina under a cooperative model. No board dictators, no secret fines, just shared responsibility. At first, I wasn't sure. I'd spent so long fighting, the idea of leading anything felt foreign. But then I thought of what my uncle would have wanted. So, with Mrs. Bennett as treasurer and Dr. Martinez as environmental advisor, we drafted a new charter, one that protected residents' rights and the bay itself. Transparency, fairness, and zero tolerance for abuse. We reopened 6 months later. Clean water, repaired docks, and smiling faces. The yacht owners returned, some sheepish, some grateful. But every single one of them signed a new lease under my terms. Community first, environment secure, and fully above board. As for Priscilla Weatherford, the state suspended her real estate license pending investigation for fraud and ethics violations. The last I heard, she'd sold her mansion and moved inland. Rumor has it she's trying to start over in another gated community. I almost feel bad for her next neighbors. Almost. Sometimes, late at night, I walk down to the end of the pier and look out at the calm water. The marina lights reflect like stars on the surface, and I can hear the quiet hum of engines being tended by their owners. No shouting, no arguments, no fake smiles, just peace. That's when I realized the irony. They tried to kick me out for not fitting their image, but in the end, I became the one who saved the place. The rusty anchor still sits at my dock, paint chipped but faithful as ever. I run my hand along the railing and think of all the storms I've weathered, both at sea and on land. If I've learned anything through this war, It's that bullies, no matter how powerful they seem, always crumble when faced with truth and persistence. And sometimes, the quiet guy fixing his boat isn't just mending old wood. He's rebuilding justice, one nail at a time. So if your HOA ever tries to push you around, remember my story. Stand your ground, do your homework, and never ever underestimate what you actually own. Because somewhere buried in those dusty records might be your own set of keys to freedom. Your version of that Marina gate. The first storm rolled in a few weeks after the marina reopened. Not a hurricane, just one of those slow, steady downpours that turned the bay silver and made the world smell like salt and rain. I sat under the awning with a mug of coffee, watching the drops dance across the deck of the rusty anchor, and for the first time in years, I felt real peace. The community had changed. The same neighbors who used to cross the street to avoid me now waved as they walked their dogs. Kids rode their bikes past my dock without their parents yanking them away in fear of the boatman. Even the old retirees who'd been silent under Priscilla's rule were smiling again, free from her endless violation notices and intimidation. But peace never lasts forever. One gray morning, I got a call from a local journalist named Amanda Reyes. She was working on a documentary about homeowners associations gone wrong, and wanted to feature Millbrook Shores. Normally, I would have declined. Attention wasn't what I fought for. But something about her tone felt different. She wasn't chasing gossip. She wanted to tell the truth. When she arrived, she didn't come with a camera crew or makeup artists, just a notepad and a worn pair of boots. She listened more than she talked. I walked her through everything, how it started with a letter, how it grew into a war, and how it ended with a gate and a deed no one saw coming. She took notes silently, only stopping to ask one question that stuck with me. "Do you think justice ever really wins, Jake?" I didn't know how to answer. Justice is messy. It never leaves things the way they were before. It just clears the wreckage so you can start again. Amanda's piece aired 3 weeks later. Overnight, my quiet little town became national news. The man who beat the HOA, they called me. My phone rang nonstop. Neighbors from across the country sharing their horror stories. People asking for advice. Lawyers wanting to represent me in book deals I didn't want. I wasn't a hero. I was just stubborn enough not to quit. Still, the exposure had consequences. Developers came sniffing around, smelling profit. They wanted to partner with me, offering absurd sums to buy out the marina access. One guy in a pressed suit showed up with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Thornfield," he said smoothly, "we can turn this place into a luxury waterfront experience. Think bigger. Restaurants, boutiques, private slips." I looked at the water, calm and quiet. Pelicans skimming across it like they owned the place. "Son," I said, "the minute you start putting a price tag on peace, you've already sold your soul." He didn't come back. But someone else did. A letter showed up, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single line. "You think this is over? Watch your back." I didn't need a signature to know who it was from. Priscilla Weatherford wasn't done yet. Rumor had it she'd filed for bankruptcy after losing her license. The state investigation had gutted her finances. Still, she had friends. Wealthy ones who'd once benefited from her HOA games. Some of them weren't happy about the fallout, and I could feel their resentment simmering beneath the surface. A week later, I came down to the dock and found the rusty anchor untied, floating halfway into the channel. Someone had cut the lines during the night. Luckily, I spotted her before the tide carried her into the rocks, but the message was clear. They wanted me scared. Instead, it lit a fire. I installed cameras, reinforced the gate, and doubled my documentation. Mrs. Bennett helped organize neighborhood watch patrols. Not the nosy kind, but the protective kind. People were tired of being pushed around. If Priscilla thought intimidation would scare me off, she'd forgotten who she was dealing with. Then came the lawsuit. A thick envelope arrived from a law firm I didn't recognize. The Friends of Millbrook Shores Marina, an LLC newly formed by, surprise, former yacht club members, were suing me for restricting access to community waters and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I nearly laughed when I read it. They were suing me for owning what I legally owned. But this time I wasn't alone. The community rallied. Dozens of residents wrote affidavits in my defense. Dr. Martinez's environmental data became key evidence, showing the marina cleanup was both legal and necessary. The county backed me publicly, confirming my ownership in front of a judge. When the verdict came down, it was swift and brutal. Case dismissed, with prejudice, meaning they couldn't file again. Priscilla's last stronghold collapsed that day. Still, part of me couldn't shake the feeling that victory didn't feel like I expected. There's no parade for standing your ground, just quiet mornings and long silences where you realize how much energy fighting takes out of you. I'd spent months battling lies, paperwork, and power plays. Winning was relief, not triumph. One evening, Amanda came back for a follow-up interview. She asked how it felt to see everything come full circle. I told her the truth. It feels like fixing a boat after a storm. You're proud it's still floating, but you can still hear the wind howling in your head. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. That night I walked the marina, flashlight cutting through mist. The water was smooth as glass, the boats quiet, each one reflecting the dock lights like lanterns in a dream. For a moment, I thought I saw my uncle standing near Rusty Anchor, that old grin of his ghosting across the fog. I could almost hear his voice. Told you, Jake, never sign away the water. Life slowly found its rhythm again. The cooperative we'd built grew stronger. Families fished off the pier on weekends, teenagers helped repaint the dock rails, and every board meeting was open to anyone who wanted to attend. No secret votes, no fines, no fear. One afternoon, I caught Mrs. Bennett staring out over the bay, a rare smile softening her face. "You know," she said, "you didn't just win against her, you gave this place back to us." That hit harder than any court victory ever could. Months passed. Amanda's documentary won awards. Developers eventually moved on to easier prey. Even the yacht owners learned to adapt. Funny thing is, once they stopped hiding behind the HOA's walls, they turned out to be decent folks. Some of them even joined our cleanup projects. Every now and then, someone brings up Priscilla. Where she went, what she's doing. I don't ask. Let ghosts haunt themselves. Instead, I spend my mornings on the water, just me and the Rusty Anchor, the hum of her old motor echoing across the bay. The world feels honest out here. No politics, no fake smiles, just salt, wind, and the sound of gulls overhead. Sometimes I think about writing it all down properly, not for fame or revenge, but so that the next poor soul who gets a certified letter in their mailbox knows they're not crazy for fighting back. HOAs, bureaucrats, bullies, they all count on one thing: people giving up. But the thing about people like me is, we don't quit. We fix. We rebuild. We stand our ground even when the tide's against us. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, I locked the marina gate again. Not out of defiance, but out of pride. The metal clicked shut, echoing through the still air. It wasn't the sound of victory anymore. It was the sound of peace finally earned. And if Priscilla ever did come back, I'd greet her the same way I greeted that first storm. Calm, steady, and ready. Because some storms you fight, others you learn to sail through. So yeah, that's how a simple fight over a fishing boat turned into one of the biggest HOA takedowns this side of Florida. It's been a wild ride, full of storms, lessons, and a whole lot of saltwater justice. If you stuck with me to the end, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life stories like this, and share this video with anyone who's ever had to deal with an HOA nightmare of their own. Until next time, this is Jake Thornfield, signing off from the Rusty Anchor, where peace, patience, and property rights still mean something.